All right, guys, as you're finding your way back to your seats, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Adeeba Raheem. She's serving as an assistant professor and director of the Construction Safety Program at the University of Texas, El Paso. She's also an invited member of the President's Advisory Committee on Sustainability, and she has received more than $2.5 million in research funding from various federal agencies, such as the U.S. Department of Labor, U.S. Department of State, the National Science Foundation, and the Federal Highway Administration. Her research interests include sustainable cities, construction safety, and construction management. So please help me welcome Dr. Raheem.
Good morning, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well and staying safe. This is my first time in Oklahoma, and I have already made some friends, so a great, happy start for me. Also, look at the facility we are in right now. It's beautiful. I never thought that museum buildings can be that interesting. So thank you to all the organizers. Now, during this pandemic, we have learned so many things. And I think one of them is how to be resilient, how to take advantage of existing resources combined with technology to create efficient and sustainable solutions in order to solve our complex engineering problems. And yes, the transportation infrastructure is no more an exception. And that is exactly what I'm going to talk about today, that how we can take advantage of modeling-based technologies such as BIM to create and improve and inform our life cycle processes for transportation industry from pre-planning stage through the operation and maintenance and beyond. So the focus of today's presentation would be to give you a holistic view of current state of BIM implementation for transportation projects. I'll be talking about what are some of the challenges associated with that, what are some of the things that are really holding us back when we talk about full-scale implementation of BIM. And yes, some of the opportunities that we really need to focus on if we want to keep pace with the rapidly changing landscape of transportation sector. Let's begin with defining BIM, and I know that there are so many definitions available in terms of existing literature on BIM, plethora of information talking about advantages and disadvantages of utilizing BIM. But I really want to focus on two things here. One, BIM is not just a 3D model. I repeat myself, BIM is not just a 3D model. Rather, BIM is a model-based process that can cover all the phases of a project: pre-planning, construction, operation and maintenance, and end-of-life phase as well. Also, ideally, a BIM should be a single progressive source of information, anything that relates to project. But unfortunately, because of lack of systematic collection and then storage of information during the construction process, very little information is being utilized after construction is done. There's a huge gap when we talk about utilizing that information. So sometimes we just scan the digital information and forget about that. And we really need to focus on bridging that gap after construction is being done. $1 million question: why we need to focus on model-based processes such as BIM? And the answer is simple, and I think it became simpler because what you have heard from Secretary Tim in the morning, that at this point, transportation sector is in a transition state. We are talking about autonomous vehicles. We are talking about Industry 4.0. We are talking about connectivity. We are talking about electrified road systems. And on top of that, we are talking about equitable transportation. So all these advancements that they will require us to have a substantial change in the standard transportation infrastructure that we are talking about today, and really in unexpected ways. When we talk about these systems, these systems are complex systems. They are dynamic, and they are interconnected. So in all, we are talking about system of systems. There should be systematic flow of information in order to have one system work properly, and we cannot ignore that. I can just give you one example that I'm recently been involved with. UTEP, along with 5 other universities, recently received an NSF Engineering Research Center grant that is focused on inductive dynamic electric vehicle systems. And believe me or not, it will require a substantial change in our existing infrastructure in near future. Because UTEP is involved with the transportation thrust, we are trying to utilize building information modeling and in extended form, which is digital twin technology, to really study the impact of that system, considering different aspects of that project. And if somebody is interested knowing more about that, we can talk about that later. Another way looking at things is how digitized transportation and construction sectors are. And this graphic is taken from the recent report prepared by McKinsey Global Institute. And they talk about rate of digitization across the United States in different sectors. And as you can see, transportation and construction sectors, they are lagging across most of the dimensions. You talk about asset management, rail usage, and labor connectivity as well. And there is a huge gap that we really need to fill in if we want to keep pace with the technologies that we were talking about in the morning and now. In the next few slides, I will try to give you a state of implementation at organizational, project, and state levels, kind of presenting a business case. It was difficult 5 years ago talking about these things, especially for transportation infrastructure, but I think that now we are trying to catch up with a few things that we were missing as compared to the vertical construction industry. And because I'm an engineer, we love to present data, and I'm showing some numbers to you. I couldn't resist that. Autodesk, in collaboration with Dodge Data and Analytics, they started a project in 2012 focusing on looking at BIM implementation for various infrastructure projects. And in 2017, they focused that survey study, which was multinational, on transportation infrastructure only. What they reported was quite positive to see. 52% of the respondents, they reported that they deploy BIM in over half of their projects, which is 20% in 2012. So you can see there is progress just in 2 years, and it shows the need of this kind of technology and platform, and what are the benefits we can get by implementing that throughout the project lifecycle. Some other interesting results. They also asked the companies that during which phase they are implementing BIM. And it was, again, understandable that most of the technology is being implemented during the construction phase. But you can see something that I have highlighted here. Post-construction phase, none of them reported that they are using that information. Huge plethora of information that we collect during the construction phase is not being utilized. We are always very interested to see that when we adopt a new technology, what's the return on investment? And again, it was positive to see that more than 50% of the respondents, they reported that they had positive return on their investment utilizing building information modeling on transportation infrastructure projects. Interestingly, they also asked a few questions to the non-users of BIM, And they reported that those non-users even, they are talking about importance of BIM for transportation infrastructure from moderate to high, over 50% in next 5 years or so. So there are so many reasons that those companies are not utilizing BIM, and we can have like a different debate on that. But yes, they see the importance of utilizing BIM for their projects. At the project level, again, if you see the trend, they ask the companies that which activities they mostly utilize BIM for. And as you can see, most of those activities, they are during the construction phase. And number one is utilization of BIM for spatial coordination, along with the client review and approval. Another interesting study was conducted in 2019 by NCHRP, where they were looking at the current level of this technology implementation across various state DOTs. And as you can see that there is a varying trend across these DOTs, and even they observe that in a single DOT, the variation is there in terms of implementation of BIM during different phases. But again, the positive conclusion was that more than 60% of these DOTs, they are trying to, or they are utilizing BIM technology in their projects. But there is not a single one that can say that they are utilizing BIM in its entirety, where we really need to work on right now. All those DOTs who have been working with BIM in the past 4 or 5 years, the good thing is that they are now focusing on trying to utilize BIM in terms of life cycle integration for their projects. Some of them, they are looking at data-driven asset management approach, and others, they are talking about model as legal document. And I know New York, Iowa, and Florida DOTs, they have utilized BIM as a legal document on multiple of their projects. And I think there's so much that we can learn from them and other DOTs. Again, somebody mentioned that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just need to take lessons learned from other DOTs and see that how we can enhance the productivity. Let's talk about some of the challenges. Again, at the organizational and project level, most of the stakeholders, they are of the view that we really need best practices, guidelines, specifications, and again, some of the business cases that we can see by implementing from other DOTs so that they can utilize it for their own projects, scale down or scale up depending on the size of the project. We also need to fill the knowledge gap, which is, again, something that we cannot ignore. And I will talk a little bit about that later, but you know, the baby boomers' retirements, and then we are talking about a different generation of workforce development. And even in academia, we talk that we are serving a different student population. These students, they are tech native, and they have not seen this world without technology. So we have to just keep that thing in mind. At the state level, again, in all the discussions that I have been involved with, I have heard state DOTs, they are talking about data standards. And again, it's very important that can be scalable for the purpose of different DOTs, specific to their scope. And again, the knowledge gap between contractors and state DOT's perspective on using BIM, another very important thing that we need to focus on. And I think that it can be resolved when both the parties, they can sit together right in the beginning of the project and see how they want to implement building information modeling. Also, compatibility of technology platforms for smoother data flow. And if I would be giving this presentation 5 years ago, that was quite a challenge. But now, with the computational processes in no time, and then other cheaper related technologies, it's easier. And moreover, the vendors, they are talking to each other. how we can make sure that information can have a systematic flow if somebody is utilizing different platforms. And definitely buy-in from the senior staff as well, because we cannot just ask them to make that change right away. We have to provide some kind of training to prepare them. Some of the related opportunities, and I just like combine everything together because there is a very positive happening led by Federal Highway Administration in June this year. We were all talking about having a national roadmap for BIM implementation for transportation projects, solely focused on that. And Federal Highway Administration, they took a lead on this preparation, and they have first iteration, and I highly encourage everyone to have a look at that, where they are talking about how we need to move forward from here on. It has different aspects that covers asset management, industry standards, as well as education and best practices as well. Just to give you an overview of that, they are talking about next 10 years, and during the first 2 years, they are focused on the foundational and development activities only. That includes objectives like preparing standards, collaboration, skill development. But from after 2 years onwards, they'll be talking about more on the deployment of this technology on various projects. So again, kind of give you an overview where they are moving. And just remember that as compared to the vertical construction, such as the building industry, we are 3 to 5 years behind in terms of progress of implementation of BIM. Now, on this slide, I have just summarized what I've been talking about during this presentation. But the key message here is that BIM is relatively new technology for transportation infrastructure projects. And we cannot implement that utilizing its full potential with the old processes and traditional mindset. If we really want to move from paper-centric to model-based processes, we have to come out of our silos and collaborate. And yes, universities can play a really important role as regional hubs and assisting DOTs in terms of research, training, and workforce development. And with that, thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
All right, and we have some time for a few questions here.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a shameless plug. ACRP did a research report on BIM beyond design, exactly what you were talking about as far as post-construction, and that's ACRP Research Report 214.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy. Any questions?
And again, I think the momentum is building. It's just more of collaboration that is needed.
Dr. Raheem, can you provide some insight? You had talked a little bit about the stakeholders as far as the DOTs and the contractors. I'm thinking also of consulting engineers. Can you just give a little bit of insight about the benefit they derive from BIM, how it's different, and what it's going to take for them to come together to have like a shared model?
So again, the very first thing they look at what's their return on investment and how they can have collaborative processes throughout the project. And more important now, we are talking about facility management, what is being done after the project is constructed. And they have seen a lot of progress and a lot of benefits of utilizing that information. We are talking about creating digital twins. Again, the digital replica of the physical asset. And we have seen so many benefits and advantages when we are using the real-time information and seeing the impact of real environment on the projects. So again, tie back to how and when they are going to utilize that. We need to sit together in the beginning, not during a single phase of the project.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Raheem.
Any other questions? Well, if none, I'm here. If you want to talk, you are welcome to do so. Thank you so much.